All right. Hello, Dimitri. How are you today?
I'm good, man. I'm
Good.
good. How are you doing?
Doing well, doing well. So we're going to talk today about the disintegration group from September 17th.
And I'm not in the picture because I'm not prepared. I wanted to get a notebook, but I'll take notes on my phone. Nope, I got my
Okay.
notebook. This is really exciting for people watching. You want to start over?
Sure. You want to? No,
Let me
no,
get a
no.
pen.
It's all
That's
part of
fine.
it. It's all part of it. It's the
And
personality.
I don't have a pen. Do you have a pen in Columbia that I can borrow?
Yeah, sure.
Um,
Yeah.
Anyway, TikTok. So yeah, the psychedelic disintegration group from what's today? What day was that?
That was September 17th.
That was September 17th, 2019. I'm I can actually feel. You know when you got one of these bags with all the pockets and you can kind of feel it, but you
Sure.
don't know where something is.
Yep.
I'm going to try to find a metaphor for psychedelic and that, but that's a lot of work, so I'm not going to. So, hi. Happy
Hi.
to be here. I'm at Cassava House on First Avenue in East Harlem in my favorite booth. Just happy to be here. So yeah, we had a great group last week. A couple of new members stopped by. I gotta say, at the end of it, one of the new people said, "Is it always like this?" Meaning that we were all like virtually in tears. Or actually in tears, some folks, because it was just really moving. I think this will be a subject for later, but because I want to keep it to one subject. But we did talk about death and dying, and there's a great deal of emotion clearly around that.
Okay.
But I want to get to something that I think about quite a bit.
So what was the overall theme of the session last night?
I'd say if I were to pick a theme, I would say what happens when the psychedelics, quote, don't work. And
Okay.
I do put that in quotes because, and you know, folks who have been watching this or have heard me at all know that this is sort of a theme with me, a reoccurring theme. With the success of Michael Pollan's book and with the great work that MAPS is doing, trying to bring the message of psychedelics to more and more people, comes like a message that when you do psychedelics, B will happen.
B will happen?
Yeah, if you put A in your mouth, B will happen.
I see. Okay.
Especially if it's done with, curiously enough, the people who are most qualified to do that are from the same class and educational background and usually gender and race, but class and educational background certainly, as the folks who are proponents for psychedelics. But that's another rabbit hole. What really, they put A in your mouth and B will happen. And if you take so much of an amount, B will happen. And if you go to so many therapy sessions, B will happen. It just isn't that way. It hasn't been my experience personally. And it hasn't, in terms of my own recovery and my own healing, nor has it been my experience sitting with people. The results are as varied and different as people. That is to say, there's probably about 8 billion results. Now, the job to get it legalized is to sort of find that medium group, and, you know, research is, you know, either consciously or subconsciously skewed for a result. And so these numbers that I'm hearing are, to me, and these are from my friends, I don't believe them. I don't believe, you know, that something like 70% of people who do, you know, MDMA 3 times with people of that educational and class background sitting with them will experience, you know, complete or the ending of PTSD. Now it's kind of a fucking weird statistic, because what they're talking about is specifically what the diagnosis for PTSD is and what those symptoms are. So specifically for that, it doesn't mean your life's bad. It doesn't mean that you're not depressed. It doesn't mean you're not angry. It's just or experience addictive patterns. It's just those symptoms. So I think that is very honest, and also not giving the full picture. It's very honest in that maybe some percentage of the people experience it. I don't believe the percentages that they're talking about right now. I think there's a lot of reasons for those types of numbers, but people read Michael Pollan, and apparently every time you took something with people in this demographic, that's important that they be part of this class and educational background in order to have success, apparently, that you have this incredibly successful experience and it's all good. And someone came in, really a guy in a lot of pain, really beautiful guy. And he went out and he found, a professional with several letters in front and in back of their name, and apparently very competent professional. And, he did it. And he experienced, he did MDMA in this case, and experienced nothing.
Nothing. No effect whatsoever.
A little bit of effect, but nothing really.
Okay.
And this happens. Now, the thing is that he comes out of that, and what he relayed was this incredible disappointment in himself.
He took it personally.
Well, yeah, why wouldn't you? The best minds of Johns Hopkins and NYU are telling you that this is the fucking way. And he went to find the Holy Grail, went through great difficulties, and no one set him up for the possibility of nothing.
Nothing. So, I mean, is this something that, I don't want to say common, but is this something that has been evidenced in other people as well? They take the MDMA?
I would say common.
It is common. So it is common for somebody to take.
I mean, what's the definition of common?
1 out of 10.
Oh, it's more than common.
Way more than common. So you take a dose of MDMA and you have no effect whatsoever.
Well.
So when you say no effect, do you mean that they didn't get the desired result, or they just didn't feel any effect?
He felt very little effect. I mean, he was off of his SSRIs for 6 weeks, which is the recommended. All the good psychopharmacologists say that that's where it's at.
Right.
But he felt something, but and then he didn't experience a result.
Now, is there any possibility that the SSRIs that he was taking either were still lingering in his system, or maybe they damaged the receptors to the point where they can no longer respond in a normal way?
I have no idea, but I'm hearing no. I'm hearing that, there's a chance of that, but I'm hearing from the psychopharmacologist no. But here's the thing.
Yep.
In answer to that, no. There is a variable. Like, everything is not the same for everybody. So to try to say this is the dose you use, this is the playlist or 3 accepted playlists, and this is how you do it, all of it is nonsense and will end up harming someone. How was this guy harmed? I don't know what, and I'll get to, there were other people in the group that said, yeah, I've had similar experiences. That they went in and some people had several experiences with various different drugs or psychedelics or medicine and have not experienced a positive result. I think the fault lies in the culture that we have created as advocates for psychedelics and trying to fit in within the box of success and failure that is necessary to get drugs approved. But it's the same box that is producing the illness that we're talking about. So it's the same box that says that you're a success or failure. Someone's making a nice smoothie right now. A success or failure by the time you're in the 5th grade, or fuck that, 1st grade. The same box that stratifies people in that way in order to be good clogs in the machine and the tools and the workings of capitalism. So, and then, we're talking about an abstraction now. Here's the same boxes that is making this guy a failure because he went for this and it didn't work.
Makes him a what? A failure?
A failure. He failed.
Oh, a failure. I'm sorry. I misunderstood.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, and then a couple other people talked about going in and having the same experiences, not feeling much of a difference, not seeing the bar move very often. And that happens quite a bit.
Okay.
Now, someone who's been coming to group for a long time, for a year now, and has sort of shifted his way of seeing his depression, his anxiety, his PTSD. God, I even hate to say that. I hate the way I worded that. His.
Okay. Okay.
That's also part of this bullshit of ownership. And in a future talk, we'll talk about the fucking PTSD and trauma industry. That's another thing. But what he said was that he was able to contextualize all this differently because he had embarked on this path. And that coming to the group and coming to other groups and going into other modalities like breath work and ritual and groups and things that he would never have done before has helped him. So I think it's important to contextualize for folks before they start how this may or may not work. I mean, contextualize it. Like, look. I'm a ceremonialist. I'm not an orthodox ceremonialist. I'm not going to say that the only way that you can see X, Y, or Z is if you fucking face this direction and wear this feather and chant this fucking. I think that's all bullshit. Okay. And shamanistic cultures are equally, in some ways, filled with domination and bullshit as our highly mechanized culture. But what I will say is that we will work together to tailor make this together, co-create a space to make as much meaning as we can, regardless of the compound. Actually, compounds interest me almost none at all. I mean, I love drugs, and these are drugs, and I love drugs. I've always loved drugs. But I think the context of how we consume these drugs and with whom we consume these drugs and what we are saying to ourselves and others in ceremony, even if you don't want to have ritual, we're going to say today is Wednesday again, and Thursday's going to be different because we're making it different. And you may or may not experience all this, but what can we have set up so you can have some relief? Just the fact that he went there and did all that, to me, says so much. The journey, all of our spiritual stories are about journeys, quests from one point to another.
So what was some of the more specific feedback that he got from the group last night?
That other people had experienced the same thing.
Okay. And now, were there certain, was he given any advice or I mean, what did they say to them? Say, okay, yeah, you went through this experience. Here's something you could take away from it. Does that make sense?
Well, I mean, there's someone who just shared that they did all this other stuff as well.
They did it as well. They had the similar experience, so that he could
And
identify.
then they went to groups. They went to start exploring spirituality, meditation. You know, I mean, I wish there was a way out, because basically the psychedelic movement is saying that if you take what the goal is to create a product. That's the goal. That will
meaning
be
a sellable product, something that they could market,
a product that
package it,
that
put it on
venture
the shelf and
capitalists
sell it.
that will be approved by the government, and venture capitalists will find interesting enough to bring to market. So they want to create a product that will basically heal the wounds of materialism.
Okay. All right. I'm just kind of letting that sink in for a minute. So.
Well, that's it. That's the move. You know, I was at the a cannabis conference. My brother's a grower, and he and his partner actually to meet our friend Derek. We went out to Las Vegas, and we had this beautiful. You know, it was just good to see friends, and I thought, okay, cannabis conference, cool. You know, and I hadn't been to anything cannabis related in 10, 20 years. You know, in terms of like a gathering. Thought it would be activists, and I walked in there, and it was basically a fucking trade show.
Yeah.
The first thing I saw, and I walked in the door, was there was this SWAT truck with like this video of guys coming out, these beefy guys with automatic weapons to defend the pot.
Yep.
And it was just heartbreaking. Then after I met with a beautiful guy, actually, a guy who's involved in the psychedelic movement happened to be in town, and I met with him, and we sat down, and there were some other Bitcoin cannabis people were there with him, all these young people, and they asked me about Ibogaine, and I started telling them about Ibogaine. We had a coffee, and another friend of them joined, and one of the people in the group said, "This is Dimitri," and he was just explaining his industry.
Industry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, it's a business now. There's no question about it. I mean, the legalization is a double-edged sword. Please forgive me. I have a truck going by.
That's okay. I can't really hear it, man.
Oh, okay.
I don't think it's double-edged, really. I think it just cuts one way.
You think? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I mean, is this something you want to talk about here, or is this something we should?
I can talk about it more, but like, I mean. We're going to come on.
Because I'd like to stay focused on what happened in your meeting.
We could talk about it, or maybe
let's just kind of. Yeah, we could do a blog about that.
So what happened is, like, look, the path is the deal, the community is the deal, the space is the deal. Whether you got $30 to come to this group, and if you don't, there's other places where we can have communal space. That is the deal. What he talked about was that, he had an experience where he got out of his suffering in the 70s or maybe it was the 90s by meditation, and this guy who came in by meditation and acupuncture, and he felt this little strand of hope. And then when we talked about that little strand of hope, he said, and how that moved us, because it was such a moving, he felt a relief and a commonality with everyone on the subway. And that lifted the group.
Okay. So I'm kind of starting to recognize a very common thread through a lot of these conversations that we've had. And that is, regardless of what it is you choose to use to find some relief from whatever it is that you're dealing with at that moment, the common factor that seems to give people the most relief is when they find themselves to be part of a group.
I think so.
So whether you're doing psychedelics or whether you're doing meditation or yoga, when you become part of that group and everybody is accepting of you in that group, there's healing in that. And if psychedelics happens to be part of it, so be it. If yoga happens to be part of it, or drinking coffee, Yep. So you mentioned to me before we started recording about the subconscious and overt shaming within the psychedelic culture. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think that there's this pressure for it to work.
Okay.
And then there's this gaslighting of folks who either had a bad trip or it didn't work. Well, you weren't ready for the medicine, you weren't done the right contacts, and the whole list. It just didn't fucking work for this guy. But what did work is sharing about it. And that's it. I mean, someone in the group, look, we're pack animals. We heal in pack. We heal collectively.
Yep.
And someone said, let me get this right. When we come together, our pain is halved and our joy is double.
Yeah. Okay. That sounds good. And it sounds like a nice way to end this one too.
I think it's good.
Sounds great. Okay. So let's talk again about the disintegration group every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. 116 West 23rd Street on the 5th floor. $30 for each 90-minute session. You can drop in, or you could go to dimitrimaginas.com.
Is that my point in the right direction?
You're pointing in the right direction. Okay, and you can reserve your spot and pay for your spot right there online, so you have a guaranteed seat when you walk in. All right?
Bless you.
All right.
I'll see you all later.
Thank you, Dimitri.
Bye.
Talk to you soon.
Thank you, brother.